and welcome back to Hot Thai Kitchen. Now, I just bought this fantastic indoor electric grill and I'm very excited to use it, so I figured let's grill on this next episode of Hot Thai Kitchen. So, I'm going to grill some satay. Now, you're probably used to seeing satay in Thai restaurants in the form of chicken satay. But if you've been to Thailand, you know that there is no such thing as chicken satay, and it's all pork. And we call it mu satay. Mu means pork, and satay is, it's the same as satay, but it's the word that represents the whole process, the whole skewering and the marinade and everything else. So, let's get going. First, we're going to make the marinade. Now, we're going to make it with our handy-dandy pestle and mortar again. So the marinade is a combination of various herbs and spices, and we're going to start with a teaspoon of minced galangal. Now galangal is, I've talked about it many times before, this monster over here. And instead of mincing it with your knife, which you could do, what I did was I used this thing called a microplane, or some people call it a zester, but I call it microplane, and you just grate it and then you get this fine minced result without having to actually mince it. So in goes that into a pestle and mortar. Next is lemongrass, so it's finely chopped. In goes that too. Next is our colorful root called turmeric. Turmeric looks like this. In Thai we call it kamin. Now it's bright orange. It doesn't really have much of a flavor or smell in and of itself, but it's going to give a beautiful, iconic, unique color that satay has. So I grated it with a microplane. You can just finely mince it as well with your knife. Now, so a teaspoon of that. A word of warning, do not wear white when you're working with turmeric. Once it stains you, it will stain you for a long time. You can also use turmeric powder. If you don't have just a teaspoon of it, it will work just as fine. So you're going to grind everything up until they're finely mashed together. And don't do this at night or your neighbor might be mad. It's a little loud. Okay, now that it's a beautiful paste, you're going to add 2 teaspoons of toasted and ground coriander seeds. Now coriander seeds comes from the cilantro plant, but it smells nothing like cilantro. So if you don't like cilantro, don't worry, this will not give you any kind of unpleasant taste. It's got a very toasty, woody, earthy smell once you've toasted it. And I basically just dry toasted it in a saute pan. Keep stirring so they don't burn. And once they start to crackle and once you can really smell it, then take it off heat and grind it in the pestle and mortar. I had to do that separately because if I add the whole coriander seeds in right now, it's not going to grind as well as if you did it separately. And then in goes ground cumin, toasted and ground as well, half a teaspoon. And just mash all of that together. Next, you're going to add about a teaspoon and a half of salt. I use kosher salt because then I'll never get it confused with sugar because it's a lot coarser. So a teaspoon and a half and about 2 teaspoons of sugar. 1, 2, 3. This is a half teaspoon measure. So. And you're going to mash everything together again. Alright. Now we're going to get it into a marinade bowl. So a medium-sized bowl. Let's put this over here for now. Alright. So get all of that in there. So you can come closer and take a look to see what it looks like. Now the turmeric is orange, but you see in a second that once you get the coconut milk in there, it'll turn yellow. Your satay end result is going to be yellow. I don't know how it turns from this bright orange to yellow, but it does. And it's just a little bit of white pepper. And half a cup of coconut milk. Now, the best thing to do with the coconut milk for this application is to put it in the fridge, and you know how the fatty part of the coconut milk floats on top? Use that if you can, if you remember to put it in the fridge ahead of time, because it's thicker, and for a marinade it just gives you less water and more of the flavor. So now this is what it looks like. Come take a look. And as you can see, it's not orange, and it's got a yellowish tint to it, and this color will intensify as we marinate our pork. So that's our marinade. And now we're going to prep our pork. What I use is pork chops, and here's why. One, it's a tender cut, and we're going to grill it, and it's a high heat, quick cooking method. You need a cut of meat that's tender. If you're going to slow cook it, braise it, then you go with a pork butt, which is more tough, so you can braise it so it softens up for you. So we want to get it into a strip like this so we can skewer it. And I like to get pork chops because it comes in a perfect width. So I only have to cut it in one direction, and then here we go. But you can choose a different tender cut of pork if you'd like. That's the bone, we don't want it. So I'm going to just trim the fat around it. You don't want that. And if you like fattier pork, go ahead. Sometimes I like it fattier too. And now we're going to cut it into thin strips, probably about 4 millimeters, or for those who are used to the US system of measurement, about 1/4 of an inch thick. So just like that. And they don't all need to be equal in size. I mean, after all, they're skewers, and you know, it's Thai food, it's rustic food. So just like that, all right? So I'm going to keep going, and we're using about 1 pound of pork, all right? So I've cut all of my pork, I put it in the marinade, and now I'm going to let it sit for at least 30 minutes, a couple of hours preferably. You can do it overnight if that's easier for you. And so I'm just going to set this aside, and we're now going to make the dipping sauce, with this, which is a curry peanut sauce. What I've got over here is coconut milk, a cup of coconut milk that I've let reduce until it's broken. Now, for details about how coconut milk breaks, go watch the green curry episode, and I explained it in full detail. So what it means by breaking is, if you come take a look, see that clear liquid floating? That's coconut oil that just broke away from the coconut solids. And basically I let 1 cup of coconut milk reduce for about 10 minutes until it's really, really reduced, and then it breaks. Now, if you use the can type, it doesn't happen. So make sure you use the carton type. That's 100% coconut milk. This brand preferably, because I don't know if the other brands will break as easily. So now that you've got that, you're going to put in 2 tablespoons of red curry paste, and you're basically using that oil that you've just rendered for the coconut milk to saute your curry paste. I like to do this in a non-stick pan just because it's a lot easier. So once everything gets sauteed together, you know when it's ready when you can start to smell the curry paste from over there. So in a few seconds it's going to be ready. So heat's on high for me at this point, alright? Next I'm going to put in peanuts, half a cup of peanuts that I've crushed with a pestle and mortar until it's like not completely pulverized but kind of mealy. Don't turn it into peanut butter. I've seen people use peanut butter to make the satay sauce, and it just turns into this gloopy, smooth mess that it shouldn't be. You want a little bit of that crunchiness for textural contrast. You don't want a smooth peanut sauce. Alright, so now we've got this curry peanut paste that smells fantastic. We're going to put in 1 more cup of coconut milk. Alright. 1 more cup of coconut milk, and you're going to keep stirring until it's reduced down to a thick dipping sauce consistency, and I'll show you what that looks like when we get there.